Every new Mario Kart game includes at least one new icy course, and with each new icy course comes new icy music. Except in the old games where they just wrote some icy music and used it for all the icy tracks. But anyway, what makes the music composed for these courses fit their icy themes so well? After studying these tracks for a while, I found a few tiny similarities. A lot of them feature descending chromatic lines, which in non-fancy terms means one note goes down to the note right below it, then that note goes down to the note right below it, and so on. Here are a few examples. This happens a lot in some of the most popular Christmas songs.
Santa's on his way. He's loaded lots of toys and goodies on his sleigh.
Once again, as in olden days, happy golden days of yore.
Underneath the Christmas tree, I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know.
There was actually a really controversial Vox video which tried to explain this in harmonic terms as resembling the sound of something melting, and honestly I kind of agree. And before you nerds come after me with your, he thinks chromatic descents only happen in Christmas music, let's dislike the video. One, I'm putting this out in December 2021, and the dislikes don't show anymore, but I could still see them and they still hurt. And two, I know that, but that kind of movement combined with what I'm about to talk about brings a very wintry vibe to my ears. It's all about timbre, or how particular instruments sound, and that goes beyond just shoving a sleigh bell into some Mario-sounding music and calling it a day, though that doesn't hurt. A simple explanation of timbre is that it's how you could tell the difference between a trumpet and a flute, even if they're playing the same exact note at the same exact volume. Let's dive a bit deeper. See, when you play a note on an instrument, it's not just one frequency that happens. There are usually a bunch. You can tell two different instruments are playing the same note because of what is called the fundamental. A fundamental frequency is the frequency at which the entire sound wave vibrates. It's the lowest and the loudest. But that's usually not the only sound you hear. There are also overtones, frequencies above the fundamental, and the strength of these overtones plays a major role in the timbre of an instrument. And you also might have some other little noises besides those when you play a note, such as the sounds the keys make when you press them down on an instrument like a saxophone, or the sound your breath makes as you blow. I used really realistic virtual instruments of a violin and a viola playing the same note, E4, at the same velocity with the same articulation. Compare these two graphs. On the left we have the violin, and on the right we have the viola. These are their fundamentals, below that is some noise, and on the right we have the overtones. Notice how the violin has much more powerful overtones. These two cross over the 6 decibel line, whereas none of the viola overtones do. In research conducted by the Institute of Sound and Vibration Research at the University of Southampton, sounds with less present fundamentals, like the violin's fundamental which is pushed back by the overtones, were rated brilliant, cold, and rich by subjects. Keep that in mind as we jump into some Mario Kart timbre talk. Two of my favorite courses in Mario Kart 64 are the two ice-themed tracks, Frappe Snowland and Sherbetland. And I especially love the melody that was played by this little pan flute thing. Not the most realistic sounding thing in the world, but charming. Most N64 games don't have the most incredibly realistic sounds. On the N64, audio playback could actually be sampled up to 48 kHz at 16-bit, which is pretty great. But the N64 does not have a dedicated sound chip. Instead, sound was handled by the CPU and thus had to compete for resources with other aspects of the game, leading to sound being heavily compressed in most N64 games. This is actually why music doesn't play when you play Mario Kart 64 with 3 to 4 player split screen. It's just too much for the little guy to handle. So you often had these instrument approximations that didn't take up much cartridge space, or had real instruments recorded, then compressed to hell and back. When you take either of these approaches, a lot of intricacies of an instrument's sound are lost, and they can lose the warmth of things like breath being blown into a pan flute. Listen to the isolated pan flute from Mario Kart 64. I'll also show the frequencies. It's just very thin sounding. Similar to what we talked about before with the violin-viola comparison, thin, high sounds are often associated with cold, with warmth being a descriptor of a sound that is rich in low and low-mid frequencies. This could be due to the fact that hot and cold can sound different in real life. For instance, hot water being poured sounds lower in tone because it's less dense, whereas cold water is more dense due to less active molecules, leading to a higher tone. And of course, the coldest water becomes ice. Oh, but that thin sound is just because of the limits of the N64, right? Well, honestly, probably, but it does add to that sense of cold, which is why in later games, similar timbres are used for the chilly tracks. Let's jump over to Mario Kart Wii. The Wii streamed audio files from the game discs, much more capable storage than an N64 cartridge, so space constraints were not nearly as big of an issue. But still, Mario Kart Wii's cold music utilized similar timbres to what we heard in Mario Kart 64. There's bass back there, but listen to the other active parts. The little beep-boop intro, the melody parts, and so on. You may have also heard the drums sounding a bit thin, fast, and not so realistic sounding. This actually brings me to one more point about timbre. The new wave genre, made famous by bands like the Human League and the Buggles, was all about synthesized, inauthentic sounds. Often, new wave music is associated with a cold sound due to its reliance on such timbres. So utilizing the also inauthentic drums to evoke a new wave vibe really enhances that cold association many listeners have with the genre. Rosalina's Ice World from Mario Kart 7 also takes a similar approach. Why does Rosalina have an ice world? I have no idea, but this track slaps. Take a listen to the intro. So beautiful. Very real sounding piano, right? Well then we get to this. So first they prove they can have a very realistic sounding piano pumped out of this little 3DS cartridge, but then they go to using this hollowed out piano sound. I don't know if they did this by tweaking the piano they were using a different one, combining it with some other synthy stuff or whatever, but it's clear that they were going for a completely different vibe for the lower end once the main section starts. But it's not just that lower end. Listen to the B section of this track. That sounds like a hollowed out piano too, even in the higher range. So it's clear that this is deliberate. And this really adds to the cold new wave vibe. Not to mention all of the other instrument sounds in there that sound similar to the timbres we have been talking about this whole time. Let's wrap this up with Mario Kart 8, famous for its live recorded jazz fusion soundtrack. Every track in this game slaps. Like, look at this guy on the bass, there's no way that's not going to slap. Not every track is just straight up jazz fusion though. For example, the air hoop is used to convey a more Eastern vibe on Dragon Driftway. But jazz fusion is the beating heart of this OST. Let's go over to Ice Ice Outpost. This is a heavily synth-based track with lots of thin, bright textures, which bring up cold for all of the reasons I've talked about already. But this even comes down to the bass, evoking that new wave feel, as many tracks in the new wave genre use synth basses. I think they leaned into the more electronic side of jazz fusion, making it more similar to new wave on this particular track for that particular cold purpose. When an acoustic instrument finally does take over the melody, it's the violin played in a similar register and style as the example we looked at towards the beginning of this video, providing lots of breathing room for the harmonics above the fundamental. So even when an acoustic instrument does come in, the music is orchestrated in such a way that it feels like a natural fit to the overall color of the sound. Bright, thin, and cold. Now, not all music we associate with wintertime is like this. Lots of Christmas music has warm and fuzzy nostalgic lyrics, and the music is crafted around that, making it perfect for that by-the-fireplace vibe. Mario Kart's music, on the other hand, is more geared towards evoking the environment, making you feel more immersed through the sound. The Mario Kart series has some of my favorite ice-themed music, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how it evoked that. I analyzed melodies, harmonies, rhythms, and while all of those things come together to reinforce the theme of coldness, it really is the timbre that is the foundation. But it goes beyond just using Christmassy tropes like sleigh bells and stuff, and I think that's what gives the music its well-earned reputation. Till next time, stay warm, hope you get Mario Kart Home Circuit as a holiday gift. I'm currently recording this in a New York City studio apartment, so my experience would probably just be hitting walls and wishing for lower rent, so let me live vicariously through you. At least we have that big tree here.